Archangel Chronicles 2, Chapter 8, Taxila, by Raymond Collotti, copyright 2026, all rights reserved. Our party passed by the ruined fortress at the top of the pass and descended to the lush, well-watered Gandharan plain peacefully. The sun was warm and the air was sweet with the scent of flowers. We came to Taxila not long after. It was a stunning sight. Behind stout battlements, over high, well-built stone walls, stood a thriving metropolis of wide, paved streets laid out in a well-defined grid. It was a city of Buddhist temples and stupas, colonnaded Greek temples, Zoroastrian fire towers, tree-lined avenues, public squares of teeming markets, theaters, gymnasiums, aqueducts, fountains, palaces, public buildings, baths, arenas, and hippodromes, all laced together with well-maintained roads, drains, and sewage systems. The buildings towered above the streets, reaching to the sky, built of polished wood, bamboo, stucco, enameled tiles, and stone. The commander, in his highly decorative armor, came to the front of the column as our party pulled up. He dismounted, removed his helmet, and came before Axia and Arsalion. He bowed before her. "O Queen of Scythians," he said, his hand on his breast, "I am your humble servant, Adashir. My master, the Great King Gondophares, bids you welcome. He has sent many of us out weeks ago to search for you, and the physician known as Adam. Is he with you?" Axia gestured, and I came forward. "He is, my lord. We have come from far away and with much difficulty. Is your master in this city?" "Nay, my lady, he is south, by the sea. He has bid me to come here and welcome you to his royal capital, and begs to show you the hospitality of his palace. Now that you are here safe, we will dispatch messengers to him." "Commander, can you tell me if there's word of a fleet of ships from far away?" I said. "Yes, my lord. There is word that the Great King has met them and formed alliances. There has been trouble in the coastal lands and much fighting. We hear of a great battle, a sea battle, and of a great treasure fleet. Come with me and I will tell you all there is to know." We were led up to a massive palace of polished wood, lofty towers and facades inlaid with enameled brightly colored tiles, with spacious gardens surrounding pools of water. We dismounted and unloaded our horses, mules, and yaks, and stabled them. We refreshed ourselves in hot baths and recharged our bodies with delicious fruits, flatbreads, cheeses, sweetmeats, and fine wines, and were warmed by pots of sweet teas. Once refreshed, bathed, and rested, our party assembled in a large dining hall, attended by scores of servants dressed in fine silk gowns, and many musicians playing flutes and harps and drums in the background. This was a magical transformation for the hard and dangerous road we had just traveled. I, Adashir, commander of the northern marches and watchman of the high passes, have sent messengers south to inform my great king that we have found you. Now let me tell you what I know of the great happenings down in the south, at Barbaricum on the coast, where the great river meets the sea. Adashir informed us of the arrival of the strange fleet of ships from across the sea, of the struggle with the pirates and the mercenaries, the siege and the conquest of Barbaricum, the construction of the squadron of warships by the Romans, and of the last great battle bringing peace to the lands of the Indo-Parthian kingdom, and of the arrival of the great trading fleet from Egypt, and of the scholars and philosophers that even now entertained the king. "The great king is a learned man," he said. "He has studied Greek philosophers and has endowed the great university of this city with many blessings and endowments to teach all the peoples of this land and the school them in many languages," he said. "But now you must tell me, O Queen, how is it that you have come to be here? How was it that you came through the pass? There is great danger there, and yet you dared to brave its passage." "We have come on a quest, Lord Adashir. We followed the lights in the heavens, strange stars that beckon to us. Have you seen them?" said Arsalion. "Lights? Stars? No, we have not yet seen them. But you are not the first to come to us with this revelation." "Not the first? Who else do you speak of?" "A sage, a wise man, a mage from further north and west. He came to us from the land of the Medes. In his country, he is known as a magus. I will bring you to him. He is in the fire temple, praying and looking at the stars each night." Our original intention was to rest for a short time here in the royal capital, and then travel downstream by boat to Barbaricum on the coast and meet the Great King Gondophares. I hoped Sophia and the Roman expedition would be there by now. I also planned to meet this mage, as I needed to know what he had to say about the angelic lights that guided us to this place. But before we could make any arrangements for the trip, nature intervened, making a mockery of our plans. Axia's pregnancy was nearing its end. The signs were unmistakable that labor was imminent. As the days passed, I was ever more concerned about the effects of the stress and strains of the exhausting trip was having on her pregnancy. The issue finally came to a head one morning after I examined her. I knew Axia well enough by now, and I knew she would be resistant to my entreaties to rest. So I brought in reinforcements. I stayed up late the night before with her husband Arsalion, and I confided my concerns to him. "You know better than most, my friend, how stubborn your wife, the Queen, is. She will not be told that she must enter a period of confinement," I said. "But my advice as physician is to avoid yet another difficult and long journey before the birth of your child. She must stay here in comfort." "Of course you're right, Adam the Wise," he replied. "My wife, the Queen, bows to no man's commands, certainly not mine. You think I can change that with some sweet talk? I'm afraid you will be disappointed." He smiled and went on. "When I raise this with her, she dismisses me. She will tell you tales of her Scythian womankin who give birth in the morning, pausing only briefly to be back in the saddle by the afternoon with a new babe. She will tell you she is the daughter of such common women and will endure what her ancestors have for many ages past." "Well then, my friend, we must delay this trip, even if it is only for a few days," I said. "By then, nature will take its course." "Adam, my friend, you say you know my wife. She is restless and will chafe at any delay to this voyage." "Then, my friend, we must not rely on a direct assault. We must engage in some gentle deceit," I said. "And how do we do that?" "I'm going to have to ask you to play act a little, I think." Arsalion raised his eyebrows with a quizzical look. "Me? Play act? What are you getting at?" "I think I can teach you how to appear to be suffering with a fever. I can help you pretend to be afflicted. All you must do is follow my instructions, play along, and spend a few days in leisure, in your bed, while servants tend your every wish, and ply you with wines, fruits, and sweet treats. Do you think you can do that?" Arsalion's face broke into a broad smile. He threw his head back and laughed. "Ah, Adam, I see your point. We will use the feigned affliction as the excuse to delay. Well, my friend, I will certainly do my part. Unlike my wife, I welcome the rest. In fact, I look forward to it. And whilst you are resting, my friend, we will send Targetus and Theron, who is itching to go south and explore trading opportunities. Together they will seek out Honorius and Sophia. She will be delighted to see them." And so it was that Theron and Targetus were sent downstream on the Indus by fast boat to seek out Sophia and her company. Arsalion performed his part brilliantly, with my help, of course. He was sufficiently convincing in his play acting to cause genuine concern on the part of Axia. She reluctantly agreed that the expedition south should be delayed, and of course Arsalion, relishing his part to the fullest, made a remarkable recovery, just in time to be at Axia's bedside during her labor several days after Theron and Targetus's departure. And so it was that Axia Panopliades, she who is worthy of armor, warrior queen, ruler of the Massagetei host, fearless charioteer, victorious in battle and rescued from certain death by the angelic torchbearer, ruler of the steppes, now transformed into a mother. Of all that she had accomplished, all that she endured, this was her highest calling. It is the way of things that these changes in life do not come easily. New life struggles coming into this world, but a long and difficult labor leads one at last out of a safe, warm place into the beautiful uncertainty of this world. The sweat, the pain, and the tears of the struggle to bring forth new life are quickly forgotten by the mother, who first sets her eyes on the exquisite new creature that had been growing within her. And so it was with Axia, mother and queen, as she gazed upon the face of her new son lying peacefully beside her on a silk pillow, while her fierce husband, newly recovered from his fever, looked on, his eyes watering with tears of joy. "Life will be such a riddle for this little boy," I said, taking in the scene. "Mighty warriors he has for a mother and father, and yet look how tenderly they look upon him. I envy his little life. Nourishment, peace, and all his needs met." "It certainly was not easy bringing him here, physician," said Axia. "He took over my body, took his time, and commanded all my strength and will." "Yes, it is remarkable that such a tiny creature will stop even the mighty queen of the Massagetei in her tracks," said Arsalion. "Something I have never been able to do," he said. "Yes, my lord, even now, this prince sleeps and dreams the songs of the innocent, and the mighty warrior queen of the Massagetei and her fierce warrior king consort are both entranced," I said. "I think that of all the things I have done as a physician, there is no greater gift than bringing such new life into this troubled world. We must make it a better place for him and all such children," said Arsalion. "I have never felt such love and such a sense of completion," said Axia, turning her eyes to Arsalion. "Oh, my queen, my love, I pledged to the core of my being that I would lay down my life to protect you and our son." With these words, I felt a shadow passing through the room. A chill, a sense of foreboding that ran down my spine. But I said nothing to spoil the moment. The three of us sat in long silence, watching the baby breathe the first few hours of his new life. After a time, I stirred. "My queen," I began, "I think it best that you now rest with this fine new prince and your husband. As fate would have it, I think it wise to send a deputation to the Great King Gondophares and ask if he would come here to his capital to meet you and your new heir. I am certain he will understand." Axia looked at me with some alarm on her face. "But I would rather you remained here with me, Adam." "Of course, my queen, I will. But I think we can send Theron and Targetus to him to tempt the great king to return to his capital." She smiled and looked at Arsalion. "Yes, that is good counsel. Let us stay here and bathe for a while in this pool of happiness. Go, Adam, and make the arrangements." And so it was that I sent Theron, who was excited to go south and explore these new trade opportunities that was filling his head, and combine it with this new commission. Targetus was also happy to see more of this land and find my lost love and bring her back to me. While we waited for the return, I went with the monk and the girl Lucia to find the mage. Adashir was our guide. Now, coming from a time 2,000 years in the future, it was dawning on me who this mythical person was. I also knew that Gondophares was sometimes referred to as Gaspar. So one way or another, I had been brought to this time and place to meet two of the three wise men. I reached back into my memory of Scripture, the passage from the Gospel of Matthew. I struggled to remember exactly how that went. Let me see. 3 wise men, Bethlehem, Herod, star in the east, gold, frankincense, and myrrh, etc. But I couldn't remember if their names were ever mentioned, or how many, or exactly where they were from. I wish I had paid more attention when I was a child. Wise men? How many? 3? But I didn't think there was mention of 3 of them. I think that came later. The whole story was shrouded in myth and mystery, and yet here I was, in the middle of the myth made real. But why me? Why was I chosen to witness these events? Raphael and the archangels brought me here. Yet they had the most frustrating habit of leaving me alone in the middle of the story, guided by my own meager wits to puzzle it out on my own. And yet, I knew somehow they were always nearby, somewhere in the background, present, ready to reach out in the hour of greatest need, like at the top of the great frozen pass. So I guess I will give way and just follow what has been put before me and see where it leads. These were my thoughts as we traveled through the great city, following wide paved streets, past handsome buildings with lacquered facades, glistening in the last rays of the setting sun. By the time we got to the temple, the evening star Venus shone brightly, dominating the western sky as the falling light of the sun retreated from the heavens. I looked to the northwest and felt, before I had heard or seen, the angelic presence. I discerned a faint chorus, then a pinpoint of light in the sky, which, in the now familiar way, grew and took the shape of a pillar of light as we stopped and watched. A blaring blue flame, throbbing and demanding attention. Lucia and the monk saw the light and heard the chorus. A look of wonder came across the ordinarily impassive face of the monk. Lucia stood speechless and breathless, her face uplifted and glowing in the reflection of the blazing light. It was beckoning us, filling us with longing and joy. Lucia turned to me wide-eyed. "What does this mean, Adam? What I see is beyond wonder. I hear voices, sweet voices, singing in a foreign tongue, but somehow they are familiar words without shape." "What do they say to you, child?" I asked. She grasped my hand and stepped closer. I knelt, so my face was on the same level as hers. "I think they tell me we must go over the sea, to another place, very far away. There we will find a child and his mother. Will you take us there?" she whispered. I looked at the monk. He nodded ever so slightly, but that mask of the impassive face could not completely hide his wonder. "We will go, soon." Adashir spoke. "Come, good people. We must go within. We must ask Melikor, and he will explain all of this to us." We came to the temple. The glowing angelic light cast a blue glow on the massive structure. A grand stone gateway adorned by a beautifully colored enameled bas-relief of a symbol. A figure with two large wings spanned the entrance, and at the center was the figure of a Persian noble, crowned and holding a ring. "What is that symbol, Adashir?" I asked. That is the fair of Ahar, my lord. The human figure in the middle symbolizes the soul and human wisdom, which always searches for the righteous path. The wings, with 3 rows of feathers, shows the principles of good thoughts, good works, and good deeds, which will lift the soul to the righteous path. Bad thoughts, bad works, and bad deeds, symbolized by downward pointing of the tail feathers, pull the soul from the righteous path. The circle in the middle is the eternity of the universe and of the soul, the cycle of life. The hand of the soul holding the ring is the covenant, a commitment to righteousness. The soul's head faces forward, showing the pursuit of growth and improvement. Come, let us go find the Master. The fire temple was sited on an elevated platform of limestone and enameled brick. White stone steps led up to the main entrance, flanked by Corinthian columns and Persian-styled capitals. The door was framed by a sculpted relief of a Zoroastrian sun god, Mithra. We proceeded through the door, through the inner sanctum. Passing inside, the temple was dimly lit, oil lamps and torches casting flighty, dancing lights against the polished stone walls. In the middle of the courtyard, we saw an octangular structure, a raised 8-sided stone platform surrounded with 8 Corinthian columns, spanned by curved Persian-style arches. In the middle of the platform was a very large stone cauldron containing a raging fire. The smoke and light from this fire rose up into a high, smooth dome structure of enameled and polished tile. The light from the fire glowed through the upper arched windows beneath the enameled blue dome. This was the fire temple. There were a number of priests, clad in pure white gowns, tending to the eternal flame. They were chanting prayers in another language I had not yet encountered in this world. But with the aid of Raphael's sash, given to me on my first day in this world beside the river Nile, I could understand all languages. One priest was rhythmically chanting a song in this strange tongue, a language so ancient that it was no longer spoken. In the name of Ahura Mazda, the wise Lord, the one who is the source of truth, righteousness, and light, O Ahura Mazda, with devotion I offer this prayer to the eternal fire that shines with purity, to the sacred waters that flow with life, to the earth that nourishes all living beings. By the power of Axia, the divine orders, may righteousness prevail over falsehood, may wisdom illuminate the path of all those who seek truth, and may my thoughts, words, and deeds be in harmony with the law of purity and justice. O Amicia Spentus, radiant and divine, bestow upon us strength and wisdom. Let the fragrance of Hoama bring clarity, and the sacred fire burn away all darkness. With the chant of Yatha Ahu Varyo, I call upon your divine blessing. As the Lord is the ruler, so is the spiritual leader by righteousness through good thoughts and noble deeds. May the dominion of Ahura Mazda bring peace, and may he grant shelter to those who seek truth. O Ahura Mazda, hear my prayer. Guide my soul towards the path of Axia. Strengthen my heart with the wisdom of Zarathustra, and may I always walk in the light of your truth. Truth is the highest good. Blessings upon those who walk in righteousness. Ahura Mazda, may your light shine forever. The air was heavy with the scent of incense, sandalwood, and flowers. Beyond the shrine, the open courtyard was lined with pillared corridors leading to smaller cells where many worshippers, also dressed in white gowns, sat, swaying with the chanted verses. There were other meditation chambers where scholars, also dressed in pure white robes, moved to the rhythmic chant. A sacred pond was nearby, its dark waters reflecting the flames of the fire temple. There were more worshippers around it, and in it, immersing themselves in the waters, performing ablutions in time with the chanting. The sound of multitudes and temple bells filled the air. Adashir took us to an open space beside the platform. You are on holy grounds, my lords. Please remove your footwear. He bowed to me and then looked over my shoulder. Here is the wise one, the mage. See, he is coming. I turned to where he was looking and saw a commanding figure of a man striding silently towards us. My attention was riveted. He was an amazing incarnation of Moses, or at least how I thought Moses might have looked. He had piercing dark eyes, topped by bushy white eyebrows, in a tanned olive-skinned face, framed by a head of long, wavy white hair and a magnificent long curly white beard that went down to his chest, all as white as fresh snow on a sunny winter's day. He was dressed in rich, multicolored robes, elaborately brocaded with gold and silver thread, and inset with precious jewels. He had a strong, sturdy frame, and strode majestically and confidently towards me. When he stopped, his presence commanded attention like a king. Now, all of this was striking, but there were two more remarkable things about the whole scene which took my breath away. The first was that behind him, now high in the western sky, was the pillar of angelic light throbbing and pulsing behind his head like a saintly aura. The second thing was what he carried in his hands, a gold, ruby, and emerald-encrusted treasure box, which sparkled and gleamed in the reflected firelight. This remarkable figure came up to me and stopped. He said nothing for a few moments. The chanting and the ringing of bells ceased at once, and the eyes of the multitude were now upon us. The sudden silence was profound. He opened the treasure box and handed it to me, holding it for me to see its contents. I caught my breath. Within it was an exact duplicate of the Kai Rho medal around my neck, given to me by Raphael during my first days in this world. I reached inside my tunic and withdrew my medallion, holding it up for him to see. Melikor's voice was deep and resonant. I was told you were coming. I have watched for you for many ages. The prophecy that was given to me has come to pass. Who gave you this treasure and the prophecy? I heard myself asking. A Yazata, a messenger. He called himself Healer. He is known to me as Raphael. Did he tell you why I was brought here? You are to take me to the place where we will find the One, Him who makes all things new. Do you know where this place is? He told me that you would know. What will you do when you get there? Pay homage to Him. To pay homage to Him, the Sashant, He who will raise the dead and make the final judgment. He who will triumph over Angra Magni, the evil one, the adversary, who will be rendered impotent. Mountains will flatten, and valleys will rise. The house of song will descend to the moon, and the earth will rise to meet them. Thus it is foretold. It is in the movements of the stars, and the stars who wander. And so it is written in our holy books. And the time is nigh. This holy light in the sky commands us to find Him. I come from another time and place. I know the name of the place you seek. I know He whom you seek. But I do not know how we will get there. Then, fellow traveler, we will find the way together. Word came to us a few days later by messengers ascending the great river in fast galleys. The great king was approaching, and preparations for his return must be made. Word spread throughout the city, and all rejoiced and sprung into action. Preparations proceeded at a feverish rate. Streets were swept clean. Houses, palaces, walls, and battlements were strung with flowers and hung with banners and rich tapestries. In the palace, hundreds of servants polished marble floors and lacquered walls, hung the banners, prepared garlands, cooked food, and broke out bright-colored gowns and the veils that would adorn them to welcome back the great king to his throne. The king and his entourage arrived several days later, just before evening. Hundreds of barges, shallow draft galleys, and other boats of all sizes were beached. The army disembarked, including 200 war elephants. They camped outside the walls of the city for the night, while riders scurried back and forth from the city gates, preparing for the return of the great king on the morrow. The next morning dawned bright and clear, with a light breeze from the mountains cooling the air. We were awakened by the sound of large drums. I went back to the palace terrace overlooking the main city gate, where I could take in the spectacle. Melikor, Scaris the monk, Lucia, and Arsalion joined me. Many long, large drums The diameter of cartwheels were suspended from frames flanking the road into the city. The drum beats reverberated so deeply that I could feel it in my chest. Each stroke was timed to a heartbeat and echoed from the walls and the high towers of the city. The drummers, stripped to the waist, poised before each blow. They stood in powerful stances, raising heavy batons high in the air before bringing them down in perfect unison against the surface of the drums. Their movements fluid but explosive. Roiling waves of sound alternated between sharp staccato bursts and resonant booms that shook the earth and the walls of the city. Rhythm and silence, intensity and grace. The physicality of it commanded all attention and stirred the soul. The army in the encampment, 10,000 strong, drew itself up into ranks. Standard bearers came forward, unfurling a massive banner showing the likeness of a stalking tiger, elephants, and castles. These banners snapped and swayed in the light breeze. Then came the fanfare of 1,000 trumpets, which accompanied the rhythmic pounding of the large drums, heralding the advance of the troops, marching from the camp in good order towards the city gate. The air crackled with anticipation. Behind the standard bearers, riding on a magnificent white elephant, was an imposing figure. Walking beside him, bound with gilded collar and chains, was a tiger, walking majestically between two tall guards who restrained him. The army, 10,000 strong, clad in finely worked, scaled armor, each reflecting sunlight from spear tips and shields. They marched slowly, swaying in unison and moving to the rhythm of the drums. The sound of 10,000 pairs of feet now accompanied the drums. Priests, dressed in white, chanted from the fire towers. Hundreds of Buddhist monks, dressed in saffron and carmine robes, lined the streets and took up their chant in unison with the drums. All of this filled the air with the expectation that something immense was approaching. The king's procession reached the gates and stopped. Along the towering battlements, a line of trumpeteers raised their instruments in unison, and the blast of 1,000 trumpets again shattered the air. Then there was silence. An eerie quiet fell over the entire city and the army standing at the gates. 100 heralds appeared dressed in scarlet gowns and ran into the city down the main road to their predetermined positions. A thunderous roll of drums preceded the announcement. The heralds shouted in unison so the entire city could hear their message at the same time that it was uttered. Trumpets sound, gates swing wide, dust of war begone. Let us sheathe our swords of steel as peace now turns her golden wheels. Over hill and dale let banners rise, let countless voices fill our skies. Let watchmen say, behold he nears, the great king returns, gone these many years. His elephant strides through broken stone, by battles won he saved his throne. Let flowers bloom where once lay blood, and let hope dawn at end of day. The crown was bent, but now it shines. His hands bear wounds as sacred signs. He lifts his eyes to greet the land. His people come to kiss his hands. Streets resound with dance and song. Weary hearts depart evermore. Night once so dark and long, the king will enter Taxila's door. Commands were shouted as the army marched behind Gondophares on his great white war elephant entering through the gates. We went down to the foot of the palace steps to meet him. A golden throne was set on a platform at the top of the steps in front of the palace entrance. Down the line of guards, standing at attention from the city gate to the foot of the wide steps, commands were shouted. The palace guard, golden armor gleaming 1,000 little suns, snapped to attention and beat their spears against their shields and turned their heads in unison toward the king. Gondophares, mounted atop his great white elephant, was the very vision of earthly power and command. The majestic beast moved slowly, its great bulk towering above all others. Its ears, dyed blue, flapped rhythmically. Its trunk was dyed red. Its tusks gleamed white in the sunlight, their curved surface banded with golden belts, encrusted with precious jewels. The elephant's bright golden armor revealed intricate designs on its surface, depicting ancient battles and gods. The king stood on a howdah, affixed to the elephant's back, an ornate gilded platform draped with fine silks. Gondophares stood upright, his posture regal and commanding. He wore a crimson robe over ornate gold armor, the robe flowing round him with the movement of the air. His crown, crafted of the finest gold and encrusted with gemstones, glittered and cast an ethereal glow like an aura. As the elephant passed down the street, guards knelt in abeyance, as did the crowd, rising again to their feet as he passed them by, like a field of grain blown by the wind. The elephant reached the foot of the palace steps and stopped. All was silent. An air of expectation settled upon the city. The elephant raised its great armored head and trunk, opened its mouth, and bellowed a loud, triumphant call that echoed through the canyons of buildings and towers. Then the massive beast knelt, lowering its head as if in supplication, its great trunk swaying gently back and forth, nostrils flaring. Gondophares dismounted in a movement of fluid grace. He stood tall, a long, elaborate lance in his hand, every inch the warrior king. He ascended the steps, and all bowed before him as he stood before his throne. Then, with another trumpet fanfare, he sat down, his lance laid across his knees. The assembled multitude, the palace guard, and the courtiers roared and rejoiced. Petals of flowers streamed through the air, scattered by children racing around the palace stairs and circling the throne. A dozen retainers approached the raised dais and, working in unison, lifted the entire platform to their shoulders and, moving in unison, carried the platform with the king seated on his throne into the palace, emerging into the large chamber that was to become the throne room. At a signal, 2 guards led the tiger, with his gilded collar and chains, to stand beside the throne. Many nobles, generals, and courtiers now came forward and knelt to the king. This continued for some time. We joined the supplicants, coming to pay him homage. As each group came forward, the chamberlain, procures, announced them loudly to the assembly and to the king, and he acknowledged each with a nod. At last, our turn came. We stepped forward to face the king on his raised throne. First Axia, and then Arsalion, were acknowledged by the chamberlain as the rightful rulers of the Massagette lands. They bowed, but did not kneel. A murmur swept through the crowd. Gondophares rose, and stepped off the dais to approach them. The room was filled with whispers as all held their breath at what the king's reaction would be. The message was clear. They were the equals to the king, not his vassals. Gondophares handed his ceremonial lance to a guard. The murmurs and whispers around the room subsided, and he locked his gaze first on Axia and then Arsalion. A hush fell upon the assembly. He was very tall, at least a head above Arsalion. His face was full of strength and character, with high cheekbones, a strong jawline, and a thick beard framing a stern mouth. But those eyes revealed the real measure of the man. His eyes displayed a sharp intelligence, and yet a softness and empathy as well. The corners of his eyes were wrinkled, displaying a kind of playfulness. When he spoke, breaking the silence, his deep voice rumbled like the sound of distant thunder, commanding, full of authority, yet tinged with warmth. I see here, to my amazement, the great warrior queen of the Masajite host, she who is worthy of armor, with her king consort, the mighty Arsalion of the Sarmatians. Yet I see they come without their formidable horse archers and lancers. How is this so? He rumbled, with a friendly tone in his voice. We come, O great king, in peace. We arrived at a good time, it would seem, to welcome your return to your capital, said Axia evenly. What, not to pay homage? Not to bring tribute as a vassal? Said Gondophares mischievously. No, great king, replied Arsalion. We come as equals and as allies, if you would have us. We come from far away and through many dangers and toils. We were led here by a pillar of light and voices in the sky to seek you out. Pillars of light? Voices from the sky? They led you here on this day to my return? Replied Gondophares. Well, then, that is something. But what am I to do with you? I could hardly send you back, or hold you here for ransom, when it seems heaven itself has brought you here. His eyes twinkled, and he smiled broadly and chuckled. He stepped forward and bowed his head to Axia, grasping her hands, and drew them to his lips, kissing them lightly. Turning to the crowded room, he raised her hands with his and decreed, No, I think that, with heaven on their side, the only thing to be done is to welcome them to our kingdom as equals in friendship. He beckoned for Axia and Arsalion to stand beside him. He looked around the room, searching for someone in the crowd. He seemed to find them and nodded. He turned to the assembly. I think, she who is worthy of armor, and my lord Arsalion, that you didn't come here alone. I've heard tell of someone who is with you, a physician, and his companion. Nervously, I stepped forward and knelt to the king, as did Scarus. Ah, you must be Adam the Wise, and you must be his steadfast protector and friend, Scarus. He looked at me with bemused smile. And I believe, Adam, that there is someone else in this room who has traveled over perilous seas from distant lands, looking for you. He beckoned, and the crowd parted. An elegant figure, dressed in a pure white chiton, stepped forward. It was Sophia, her trembling hands clutching at the folds of her gown. Here she was, after years of my perilous journeys, wars, my dreaming of her, longing for her presence, to hear her speak, to be in her presence. She stood before me, dreamlike but real. Those eyes, those beguiling ice blue jewels locked onto mine. The weight of many unsaid words passed between us. For a moment, neither of us moved, and time stood still. I was caught between past sorrows and the overwhelming present longing. Then, as a dam breaks, throwing aside all decorum, I ran to her, caught her in my arms, and pulled her to me. I was starved for her touch. Her fingers traced the lines of my face as if she was trying to prove to herself that I was real. I embraced her tightly, fearful that she might fade back into a mist of dreams. But actual tears, hot and unchecked, spilled down her cheeks. I whispered her name, Sophia. My voice hoarse and broken, a prayer, a plea. She could only nod against my chest, unable to speak, unable to do anything but hold me tighter, terrified that if she let me go, I would be stolen away once more. All faded into the background. There were only the two of us, torn apart by fate, but now stitched back together again. Temple bells, at once joyful, but yet foreboding, tolled in the distance. Music for Chapter 8. Myth by author unknown, Vital by Stomp, and the following from Epidemic Sound, Army of Angels by Edgar Hopp, Odyssey Ahead by Dream Cave, Mr. Pain by Lemon Hutton, Midnight Melodies by Palace on Wheels, Mystic Mountain by John Bjork, Path to Salvation by Christopher Mo Ditlevson, Vatican Mystery by Trailerworks, Ethos by Johannes Borloff, Seya Care by DEX 1200, Damien's Dream by Dragon Tamer, Warrior's Journey by Kronos, Thunderlust by Descant, Jungle Rumble by Andreas Dahlbach, Honor the Brave by Hampus Nacelius. Archangel Chronicles 2, 2020, copyright 2026, all rights reserved.